Um, Imagine playing a flawless game of professional cricket. Hitting a 36-ball century, and somehow you still walk off the field as the loser.
Right. Or think about 7 politicians brazenly breaking the law, but because they do it together as a group, suddenly their crime becomes perfectly legal.
Exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a world where the rule book isn't just bending. It's being shredded and rewritten right in front of us.
Yeah, because when the established order can't contain the reality on the ground anymore, the players involved just start creating their own paradigms.
And making sense of those new paradigms is exactly our mission for you today. But before we get into the mechanics of all this, I need to lay down a crucial ground rule of our own.
Good call. We definitely need to set the stage here.
Yeah, so today's sources contain some highly charged political content. We are talking about Indian political parties in the middle of really intense campaigns, plus some high-stakes global geopolitics. So we want to make it absolutely clear to you, the listener, that we are impartially reporting the claims and facts from the source material. We are not endorsing any political viewpoint.
No, not at all. We aren't taking sides.
We are simply unpacking the arguments presented to us.
Our focus is strictly on analyzing the underlying mechanisms, breaking down the strategies and the context without championing one side over the other.
So let's unpack this. We have a huge stack today. An unprecedented political rebellion testing constitutional law, a Supreme Court case redefining religious access, cricket records defying probability, and a geopolitical poker game in the Middle East.
It is a dense lineup, but they are all connected by this central theme of shifting power dynamics and, testing boundaries.
Let's start with the ultimate test of political boundaries.
Yeah.
There is a massive internal fracture happening within India's Aam Aadmi Party, or AAP.
Right, the defection crisis.
Yeah. 7 of their Rajya Sabha MPs, including incredibly prominent figures like Raghav Chadha and Swati Maliwal, have defected to the BJP. And this just instantly triggered a severe legal collision.
Oh, absolutely. The reaction was immediate.
AAP's Sanjay Singh called the move illegal and demanded complete disqualification. And Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann went even further.
Yeah, he demanded they be recalled.
Which is fascinating because the Indian Constitution doesn't actually contain a provision for recalling members of parliament.
It doesn't. And that specific demand really highlights the administrative panic of the moment. When a party experiences a structural rupture of this magnitude, the immediate instinct is to reach for the heaviest legal hammer available.
To punish the defectors.
Exactly. But the crazy part is the defectors are using that exact same constitutional framework as a shield.
There is a fascinating legal paradox here in the sources.
Yeah.
If 1 or 2 MPs defected, they would be instantly disqualified, right? But because 7 of them did it, making up 2/3 of AAP's upper house members, they claim it's a legal merger with the BJP.
Yeah.
How does an act that is explicitly illegal for an individual suddenly become a protected right just because a group coordinates it?
You have to look at the history of the 10th schedule.
Yeah.
That is India's anti-defection law. It was introduced in the 1980s to stop the rampant Ayaram Gayaram culture.
Right, where politicians would just constantly switch sides for bribes or cabinet positions.
Exactly. The primary goal was government stability. But the framers realized they couldn't just outlaw all political realignment. They needed to leave room for genuine ideological splits.
So they create a loophole.
A mathematical loophole, yeah. The law assumes that if 2/3 of a legislature party breaks away, it reflects a legitimate collective shift rather than just, individual corruption.
So it essentially becomes a numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
AAP is arguing that a split at the parliamentary level shouldn't be recognized, and they're pointing to the recent Shiv Sena crisis as precedent.
Right, but legal experts in the sources indicate these defectors are likely protected by that 2/3 threshold.
Wow.
But that is just the technical defense. If you look under the hood of these defections, the legal maneuvering is just a smokescreen for a much deeper administrative crisis.
Which brings us to Swati Maliwal's explosive exit. She isn't just quietly walking across the aisle. She claims Arvind Kejriwal has entirely abandoned the common man persona.
Yeah, that persona was the foundation of AAP's ethos.
Exactly. She contrasted his old image of carrying a 2-rupee pen with current allegations that he lives in lavish sheesh mahals.
Which translates to glass palaces. It's a term the BJP uses frequently.
Right, and even more seriously, she claims she was pressured for 2 years to withdraw an FIR, a formal police complaint, regarding an assault at his residence.
Those are massive allegations.
Huge. AAP, on the flip side, claims this is Operation Lotus, basically a coordinated takeover engineered by the BJP and fueled by coercion from the Enforcement Directorate.
Regardless of whether you attribute the mass exodus to genuine ideological disillusionment or, intense investigative pressure, the fundamental trigger points to systemic instability.
Yeah, in Punjab, right?
Exactly. MP Vikramjit Sahni, one of the defectors, cited a staggering state debt of over 4.5 lakh crore rupees, plus severe agrarian distress.
Wow. 4.5 lakh crore.
Yeah. When a state government is carrying that level of debt, it struggles to fund basic welfare or fulfill campaign promises. That inevitably creates internal party friction. The governance challenges in Punjab essentially became the vulnerability that allowed this national fracture.
So while we see political actors stretching the constitutional rulebook to its absolute limits in parliament, out on the campaign trail in West Bengal, the rulebook of political decorum is just being thrown out entirely.
The battle for Bengal operates on a completely different frequency. The rhetoric there isn't just heated, it's historically aggressive.
Yeah, the sources highlight a direct clash between Union Minister Amit Shah and West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. Shah made a deeply controversial remark at a rally.
Right, the Ulta Lotka Denj comment.
Yeah, literally threatening to hang upside down the goons who disrupt elections. He framed a potential BJP win as the end of the fear of goons, warning that hooligans backed by the TMC Banerjee's ruling party will end up behind bars.
And Banerjee fired back immediately.
She did. She threatened legal action, arguing that a union minister issuing physical threats is an attempt to terrorize the electorate.
But I look at this intense, visceral rhetoric, and I have to wonder about the strategy.
What do you mean?
Does promising to hang people upside down actually sway an undecided voter who just wants better infrastructure and jobs? Or is this purely about mobilizing a hardcore base?
Well, to understand the mechanism behind that rhetoric, you have to trace it back through West Bengal's political history.
Okay.
Unlike states where elections are fought purely on policy or, caste arithmetic, Bengal has a long history of cadre-based political violence. It stretches back through the decades of left-front rule and continues today.
So for a significant portion of the electorate, law and order isn't an abstract policy debate. It is a very real question of physical security in their neighborhoods.
So the rhetoric isn't just noise, it's a specific political currency.
Precisely. It signals strength. Shah is attempting to project the BJP as the only force capable of dismantling the TMC's local dominance.
Well, Banerjee is doing the exact opposite.
Right. She is using the exact same narrative structure in reverse. She's portraying the BJP as an invading force trying to intimidate the state. They are both accusing the opposition of lawlessness to position themselves as the ultimate protector.
I see.
In that environment, aggressive posturing is utilized as a deliberate tool to persuade voters who prioritize security over traditional policy promises.
That makes sense. That's what happens when politicians enforce their own rules on the ground. But the Supreme Court is facing the exact opposite problem.
How so?
Well, what do you do when a rulebook is centuries old, but the physical reality on the ground completely contradicts it? We're looking at a monumental 9-judge Constitution bench hearing right now.
Right. It touches on the very core of how religion and civic rights interact in modern India.
Yeah. This stems from a 2019 PIL, a public interest litigation. It's basically a legal mechanism allowing citizens to petition the court for broader public rights.
And this started in Pune, right?
Exactly. A Pune couple was denied entry at a local mosque because they wanted the woman to be able to offer prayers. And this sparked a massive debate tied to Articles 25 and 26 of the Constitution, which guarantee freedom of religion.
It even ties back to the famous Sabarimala temple case.
It does. But the twist in the sources is fascinating. The All India Muslim Personal Law Board, or AIMPLB, informed the Supreme Court that Islamic doctrine does not actually restrict women from entering mosques to offer namaz.
Yeah, the senior advocate representing the board drew a very specific theological distinction. While men are strictly required to attend congregational Friday prayers, women are exempted from that mandate.
But, an exemption is not a ban.
Exactly the point the board made. The theological texts explicitly state that women should not be prevented from attending mosques. Historically, this exemption was designed for convenience. It was a way of saying women receive the same spiritual reward praying at home, so they aren't forced to make the journey. Yet, over centuries, within specific cultural frameworks, that exemption gradually hardened into an outright exclusion.
And this brings us to the architectural reality, which the sources highlight brilliantly. In places like Mecca and Medina, mosques have massive gender-specific halls where women participate daily.
Yeah.
But Indian mosques were historically designed and built almost exclusively for men. So it's essentially like having a VIP pass to an event, but when you arrive, you realize the venue literally forgot to build a door for you.
It is a VIP pass with no door. And the board's submission essentially admits this architectural flaw.
Wow.
They noted to the court that because mosques do not have a centralized sanctorum like a Hindu temple, congregants stand in specific formations. Because centuries-old Indian mosques lack the physical infrastructure for gender separation, it created a practical barrier.
A physical barrier that turned into a cultural rule.
Exactly. It morphed into a cultural rule even without a theological mandate.
So how does the Supreme Court rule on what is fundamentally an infrastructure problem?
By acting as the arbiter between constitutional rights and entrenched tradition, this case forces the court to decide how to apply the modern promise of gender equality to physical spaces that were built centuries before the Constitution even existed.
Right.
It shows that religious freedom isn't solely about interpreting ancient texts. It's about untangling how those texts are physically manifested and enforced today.
So the courts are trying to carefully reinterpret historical rules, but if we pivot from the courtroom to the stadium, we are seeing athletes fundamentally break the established laws of physics and probability.
Oh, the current season of the IPL is forcing analysts to rethink every single metric of T20 cricket.
The statistics in these sources look like typographical errors. I mean,
Yeah.
you have Vaibhav Suryavanshi, a 15-year-old playing for the Rajasthan Royals,
A teen.
a literal teenager. He just smashed a 36-ball century, becoming the fastest player in history to reach 1,000 T20 runs. But here's the catch. Despite playing in innings that defies logic, Rajasthan Royals lost the match.
Yeah, Sunrisers Hyderabad chased down 229 runs with 9 balls to spare.
Which is insane. And in another match, the Punjab Kings pulled off the highest successful run chase in the history of the format, tracking down 265 runs against the Delhi Capitals.
And by doing so, Punjab completely overshadowed KL Rahul, who scored an unbeaten 152.
The first 150-plus score by an Indian in the IPL.
Exactly.
I look at these matches and I just have to ask, is this actually good for the game? If you can score an unbeaten 152 or hit a 36-ball century and still lose, it feels like the bowlers are just cannon fodder. The math of the sport seems entirely broken.
Well, it feels broken because the psychological threshold of the game has been totally erased. We aren't just looking at flat pitches, though the groundsmen are certainly preparing surfaces that offer zero assistance to bowlers.
Right.
We are witnessing a revolution driven by data and team depth. Historically, a score of 220 was an insurmountable fortress, Batters would pace their innings to preserve wickets.
Yeah, you had to build an innings.
Today, analytics dictate that preserving wickets is statistically inferior to swinging freely from the very first ball.
Because they know the players lower down the order can just keep swinging if they get out.
Precisely. The fear of failure has been mathematically removed from the batter's mindset. But this extreme aggression also exposes unbalanced team dynamics.
How so?
Take Rajasthan, for example. They relied so heavily on a 15-year-old's brilliance that when Suryavanshi finally got out, their middle order completely collapsed. They scored only 125 runs off the remaining 83 balls.
Oh, wow.
Against a deeply balanced squad like Hyderabad, a one-man show isn't enough anymore, even if that one man scores a 36-ball century. And then you add in catastrophic fielding errors.
Right. Delhi dropped KL Rahul multiple times during his innings.
You cannot give world-class batters second and third lives in a paradigm where a 260-run target is considered chaseable.
When batters lose the fear of getting out, the whole game changes. But if we take that concept of playing without fear, of pushing a strategy to its absolute maximum limit and move it from the cricket pitch to the global stage.
The consequences become terrifying.
Exactly. The escalating tensions in the Middle East represent a geopolitical poker game where the stakes are global economic stability.
It is incredibly volatile right now.
The sources detail a highly aggressive posture from the United States. President Trump recently canceled a planned trip to Pakistan by U.S. envoys, which was intended to facilitate negotiations with Iran.
He was very blunt about it.
Yeah, he went on television and stated the trip was unnecessary because the U.S., quote, have all the cards. And the military movements reflect that confidence. U.S. Central Command is enforcing a strict blockade on Iranian ports, actively intercepting their shadow fleet.
Plus the aircraft carriers?
Right, we have 3 U.S. aircraft carriers operating simultaneously in the region. Meanwhile, over in Lebanon, the IDF is eliminating Hezbollah operatives despite a fragile ceasefire framework.
The strategy at play here is a textbook maximum pressure campaign. By intercepting the shadow fleet, which are essentially unmarked, covert oil tankers that Iran uses to bypass international sanctions, the U.S. is attempting to cut off the very lifeblood of the Iranian economy.
And the effects of that economic strangulation are trickling all the way down to the average citizen.
Yeah, it's severe.
The U.S. Treasury Secretary highlighted reports that Iranian citizens are literally bartering for cooking oil because the government can no longer subsidize basic goods.
Wow.
Combined with U.S. and Israeli strikes damaging critical infrastructure, the Iranian president is now publicly begging citizens to conserve electricity.
Right.
But I look at this maximum pressure campaign, and it seems counterintuitive. If the U.S. is choking Iran's economy to the point of collapse, aren't they just guaranteeing a violent lashing out?
It is a massive risk.
How does cornering a regional power not end in an uncontained war?
Well, that is the exact gamble of this diplomatic strategy. The assumption is that Iran's internal economic strain will force them to the negotiating table before they initiate a regional war they cannot afford.
Okay.
However, Iran's primary leverage is geography. Their external posturing involves threatening vital shipping lanes in retaliation. This is why the CEO of Chevron is now publicly predicting that U.S. Navy escorts will soon be required for all commercial vessels traveling through the Strait of Hormuz.
And the Strait of Hormuz is the critical choke point for a massive percentage of the world's daily oil supply.
Which means this geopolitical standoff isn't happening in a vacuum. If the Shadow Fleet blockade triggers Iranian retaliation against commercial shipping, global energy markets will instantly react.
So it hits everyone.
Yes. The supply chain disruptions and the sheer cost of securing those waters will dictate the price you pay at the petrol pump. The U.S. believes it holds all the cards, but when the pressure reaches a boiling point, the economic blast radius will be global.
It really puts the fragility of our systems into perspective. We have covered a massive amount of ground today for you.
We really have.
From politicians utilizing mathematical loopholes to survive the fallout in Punjab, to the visceral, historically charged campaign rhetoric shaping the batter for Bengal.
Right.
We examine how the Supreme Court is forced to reconcile centuries-old mosque architecture with modern constitutional rights. We broke down the analytics, turning T20 cricket into a game of pure probability, and we traced how a naval blockade on a shadow fleet directly impacts global energy markets.
It is all interconnected.
Thank you for navigating the mechanics of these shifting rules with us.
It requires a lot of critical analysis, but peeling back the surface to see how these underlying systems actually operate is essential for staying informed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want to leave you with a lingering thought. We started this deep dive talking about the rule book, the anchor that supposedly keeps society, sports, and diplomacy stable.
Yeah.
But whether it's a 15-year-old fundamentally redefining what's mathematically possible with a cricket bat, political factions discovering group defection loopholes in the Constitution, or global superpowers leveraging aircraft carriers to force an economic collapse, we've seen today that rules are rarely as absolute as they seem.
That's very true.
The real question for you to mull over is this. In a world where the rulebook is constantly being rewritten by those who have the power to break it, who actually gets to decide what is fair, keep questioning what you read, look for the mechanics behind the headlines, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.